Okay, so now, as promised, I'm going to do the adding the spinner control, and it's already added in the main project. So what I'll do is I'll take one of my backups. It happens to be the case that these drive letters are specifically for that purpose. I'll take a recent one that doesn't have it. Okay, that's pretty recent and doesn't have 67. Or 66, sorry. 66.7. Is that thing done? Kill itself, right? Okay. 10. I'm going to be pressing pause quite often to just sort of try and remember the steps. Well, I remember the steps to try and do it in as quickly, as efficiently as possible. Now this is certainly very recent because this has utils already. I did this part of splitting up utils into two groups. Okay, so now first thing is I want to get rid of all this stuff over here. Now, quick list is where I want to use it, but I only need the project to add the control. Let's see, any new project. Running from. Now, do I have a template project in here? Basic when util. Oh, no, not there. When test. Basic when. Woo test. When you test. Just like I have utest for console. Where did I just put that? Oh, where did I just put that? Not there. When tests. Oh, source 6. Yeah, source 66. And I think, no. Of course. You know, that's what's wrong with, I guess, You notice how this, oh, it's always been upside down. But this one should know the last open directory. I just went there. But I guess it's got a different one for different things. Win tests. Woo test. Woo you test. It has a message box and should have a conversion. It should have a version resource. Let's see, standard now. Okay. That's fine. I could use one of these in the other project. So this is just any old Windows program, and we can use it to create a dialog to test our new control. So that's quite easy. So let me just do that quickly. Well, you know, it's so fast that there's no point in bothering. Okay, here's the dialog. Okay, cancel. Use that for dialog. Because the slow part is my typing. Well, let me save that here. This is the typical thing. Something like that. Didn't do anything. And that may be enough to do more. This is just the most basic dialog program. Has a template, resource template with an identifier and a dialog procedure, and an OK and a cancel button, which are handled by the default handler. So that just sets us up in a situation where we can test out our new fancy control. if it'll ever continue to finish building. Agencies not used. True enough. There's this. More of that. Okay. Maybe that works. Okay. Well, you can add the spinner control in and verify that it does its automatic thing. Go to the toolbox. Now, I actually said to add one of these and then add edit control, but obviously it's better to add this one first and then add this, so that way the tab order will be right. It doesn't really matter where you put this. Put it here, doesn't matter. We want auto buddy and auto set integer. Test the dialog. Maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, it's working. Yes, I want that. I don't want the system menu. Stop that message from appearing. Get rid of that. No, it's not gluing. It's not gluing itself. Like the other one did. Maybe you have to put it inside. No. Oh, no. Oh. I wonder if I did it in reverse order. See, it certainly looks inside. But, now this is one of those things. This is one of those things that really gets you. And go away. Okay, now IDC edit and IDC spin. Let me try this. The tab order is the same, but the spinner has a lesser number. And I think that'll change the drawing order. No, it didn't. That's very strange. Now I might have to hit pause. Let's see now. I want that different. That's the dialog. That's this. Now that's on top of this. Okay, let's try it this way. Add the spinner first. Add the edit control. Okay, now the auto buddy. It should be buddying itself with something. Well, I haven't said it yet. Not here. Okay, it's certainly lined up with that. but it's, no, it's on top. And why is it not? See, in the other one, it goes in there. Ah, oh right, I forgot about this. There's alignment. Okay, it thinks it belongs with the cancel button. Now we have the tab order. Okay, there you go. Now, the auto integer set to true, and now we got our spin control. And we go to like, so slow, but change to font. That's always too small. I'm sure on your screen it's small, even smaller than it appears to me. Sans serif. Oh yeah, that's good. Big enough for you? No, the text has got to be centered though. I don't know if I can do that. Gotta make it smaller. That's funny. Unless I can't make it any smaller. So the default is to have it not draw correctly. There must be a center. Parent number. Oh, I had this true last time. Modal frame. Oh, edge. Border. No, maybe this. No. That is the. Anyway, who cares about the style? Good enough. So basically, that's it for how you make the spin control. And it's already fully functioning and working. Except, of course, its direction is you have to go. It's going from 0 up, and usually people like to push up to increase. Okay, so now I have a hunch, and I believe that the MFC, there must be something to do with spin. So I go search. Visual C++, and this is one of those cases where I don't know what the name of the class actually is, but I think it has something to do with spin. So I don't know. I won't do the whole word. Let's see if something comes up. Spin button control. Sounds like the right thing to me. Here's the class declaration. Okay, that's definitely the one. It's not very big. So it's going to go in the controls for header file. One thing that does not belong in here is this TS menu. Yeah, I will remove it and move it sometime in the future. A menu is not a control. I don't know if I mentioned this somewhere else, but it's not. It's more like a dialog resource or a string resource or something like that. This here is really a pop-up menu, which is still not a control. And the reason why a menu can't be a control, or I mean, one reason, every control has an identifier number. And the place where that identifier number is stored in the operating system's window structure is where you would normally place and handle to a menu. So this could not possibly have a control identifier because it's already a menu. So it has a handle to menu, well it is. Anyway, so we got list here. I don't have buttons, strangely enough, but I have this checkbox, and I imagine button is going to come above this. So I would go, a checkbox is, in fact, I'm pretty sure, a button. So what I want to do is copy this code, their thing, not very much, put it here. Get rid of things we don't need. Now everything's happened. Turns out everything's public. I don't know what to do about these. Okay, well, we won't do that. Like our other controls, the construct. Okay. Well, I'm going to use public, the keyword, and I've been using the same. I guess I should change them all. I could change them all now, but this is a temp project. This part's the same for every control. Now, I didn't find any code for the constructor, so I didn't implement it. Okay, now try to make these line up. Now, one thing you have to understand is in the MFC world, a C-wind star is analogous to an H-wind. So you can just say H-wind wherever you see C-wind star. So that's correct so far. And just in keeping with tradition, we use caps for the types. Now there's gets and sets, and I separated them, so I'll do it again. Gets on the bottom, I think is best. Why do I think that's better? Well, the get things are like properties, and I've just gotten used to, I guess, seeing the properties listed below. So that's where I expect to find them. You might feel differently. You can put them wherever you like. Now, see, this part is just simple madness on my part. it looks better to me without that thing sticking out in the middle of nowhere. This is essentially the interface of whatever we're going to call this thing, and I want to change everything to capitals. There is a capital version of that. Set buddy. What's the most? What are people going to look for first? Position, maybe itself, and range, of course. Position, range, base. The last thing would be this. I do that with the editor. Alright. Now the question is what to call this thing. Right? I contracted this like that. So that part's done. I mean the class definition. Won't bother with these because the loader, the dialog loader, will do that automatically. As it's in the resource template. Okay. All right. So now we got the definition, and here they are. Here's the implementation. Okay. So we're not going to use that. I'll copy all of this. Now we need the actual source file. And if there is anything to do with checkbox in here, doubtful, combo. Oh, here it is. Okay, so it's even further up. It is a very basic object. Okay. Now, of course, we don't want any of that. But let's give it our new name. Okay. Now, I would usually make a macro for this, a keyboard macro. So I'll do that to speed things up. Let's see, down. I want to get them all on single line. Like that. That makes it easier to do things like this. These look like they belong together. Separator. we'll comment. Okay, now the obsessive compulsive part. These send messages, I have a macro for, and if there's a return value, they end with ret. So this is a good example. This is something that returns an int. And the next thing in the list would be the actual message. Now, this is using all three. No, this is using all three: U message, W param, and L param. So that means this has to be 3. And that's it. Now this is similar. This one returning an int. But this one only has 2. I could use 3 for all of them, but I don't have to. If you look at the definitions of these macros, it's just the same thing: assert, return, something. Now this particular class has a few cases where it uses low word, and I don't have a macro for that. The last time I invented a macro, I'm going to do the other ones first. This is no return value. And so first, the message. Does it have parameters? Yes, it has all 3. Message, W param, L param. You can't do that yet. This one, something that returns. Keyword. And nothing else. Let's put this down here. The one that we can't do right away. And so this again is a return style. Int. No parameters. Again, return style. No, this falls in this category. Okay. Now this is H1. And it will return. So this is a return type. Now, I'm not doing this totally willy-nilly. I know a little bit about MFC. And I know that all this from handle thing does, right, is just convert an h-wind into a pointer to c-wind object. So it's correct as far as the analogy goes, all the same. P-wind buddy. Now this get safe h-wind. All that does is return null if that pointer happens to be null. And this is one parameter, so we need a 2 here. What 1 just means the message. 2 message plus w param and 3 for l param. And this one is void. No parameters. Okay, so looking good. The last time I renamed some things to make things fit, so we could see them all together. Like low and up. Something like that. Let's do it on now. Okay, that'll be where we go. They gotta line up. Here, yeah, this is hard. Okay, now first I need a new macro for this low word thing. Same thing. Now it has a return value, so it's same as these ones. And this I did return low word. And if there was a high word, I would make that RLH. Just makes things line up easier. What I did was to make space, I did that. Uint this takes all parameters. Don't need to cast, the macro has a cast. Cool. Three again. wider inline length. Oh, I remember what I did. Okay. Well, maybe I'll just leave this. It doesn't matter because we don't use any of this stuff. Just get it out there. No parameters. So there's no parameters. That's got to say 1. Okay, these ones will line up. Alright, so now there you have it. We've got the implementation, and all the implementation is changing from function name to a send message. Oh, these are return things. I hope I got that right. Close that thing away. Well, I can tell easily. This one takes an H1 and returns an H1. So that's a 2, and we don't need the 0. And that's about as good as we can make it. Boy, there's only one word. Strangely. I'll put it at the top. Special. Okay, now the question is, does this compile? Oh. It's just got to be like, oh, we got it. So that means it also needs, just as MFC has its declare dynamic, I have this define standard control. We've got to give the name of the class. Now what does that do? Now we get into what's actually going on here. First, let me see. Compiler, no. No. Not enough. That's true. Brackets. Problem brackets. Another one. That looks like too many. I think I got it. No. No, another bracket. Where is it? Get base. Syntax error closing bracket. This matches. The problem could be a box. That's the thing with these things. That looks fine. If I make them all line up, easier to find error. Make L param without bracket. These say 3. They are 3. Bug in the macro, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So that does it. Now we can see what, how we would do it if we wanted to use Windows messages. We use these messages, and the result is this class. Now, the way this whole thing works, and I suppose this is the appropriate time to explain this part. With these controls, okay, is first off, they're meant to be used with a dialog, and therefore they have to have an identifier. This here macro declares an empty void constructor, but that's private. The way it's written down here, that's in the private area. So you can't just declare one of these things without any context, and you can't add one into your dialog without giving it an ID. We want that to force that and remind ourselves when we made a mistake. Now there are a couple things that are happening in the background to do with these controls, and something called a function called register control, and that's the reason for all of this. The reason for all of this is to remind you that you have to call something called register control at the point when you're not at the in WM-init dialog or anything like that, but in the constructor. You could, I guess in theory, you could do it in WM-init dialog, but you might as well do it in the constructor. And that part is manual, it's not automatic. It could be made automatic, but that's too much automation for me. There has to be you have to see something to give you a clue as to what's going on. Now that, see, all that registering, etc., has to do with getting the handle to window of the control back into the control. You'll notice that a control object is a friend of TsDialog, right? And it's the job of TsDialog at the appropriate time, when it can find out, to set this value, hwin, for the control. And it needs the ID in order to do that. So that's why the ID is essential. And it needs the ID before the dialog starts running. As well, it needs, once a thing is registered and picked up by the dialog class, it will, if it sends notifications, if it receives notifications, it'll be called the dialog. Sorry. If the control sends notifications to the dialog, then a special callback will be called to your dialog. Called. Where is it? Here. So you can override this here with your control, and if the control wants to say something, this will get called back on, and you can take some action. It turns out in this case we don't need that, but we still need the handle to window, and that could be done manually, but in keeping with the way things go, we'll do it the prescribed way. Okay. So what that means is if we want to use this thing, first we have to declare one. And we have name. I'll get into the more this business of register and all that. Okay. Now, in the constructor, because this thing has no void constructor, we have to use the only other available constructor there is, this one, which takes an identifier number. This one. The other one is private, we can't use it. What's it called? Spin1. And this is the point where you can register it. Now, essentially, this part is done. But there's two sides to this story, and one is that we've declared, if we haven't made a mistake, we declared it right and we registered it right and everything, but it's still not going to get its h-win. And that's because the dialog class needs to know the Windows class name that is associated with this type of window. You know, like when we use the spy, right? If I run the old program, what's this about? Oh yeah, of course. And this is the, that's fine. That's the reason. It's just telling us, the program, the assertion is telling us that although we've done everything correctly, it's still not recognized. Why? Because we don't know what type of class this is. However, we can find that out by just doing this, and there it is. So copy this class name and add it to this list here. Oh, I do have button. Oh, checkbox. Because a checkbox is a button, it turns out. Now, this was the bug I discovered while doing this. These assertions are all incorrect. It's supposed to be comparing the thing that's called pcontrol here, its type name with this name. So I can actually fix that pretty quick. Oops. Control type, say, where's your control? Type. I'm going to say stir, so you know that it's a string. Now here's our familiar friend TypeName. Oh, sorry, that's not a string. Class name. Now it turns out this is the thing to assert. In order to do the equivalent of dynamic class type checking, one defines a virtual function, pure virtual, that must be implemented by all classes derived from the base, in this case TsControl. And that I've called it TypeName, which happens to be the same name as the template function. And all that does is the implementation for this is already defined here by using this macro. TsString equals type name of this, the debug help type name. So now, because this is virtual, the correct function will get called, and so therefore the correct string will be returned. And it's going to say class TS Windows, and then the name of the class. In our case, where it went, this. So it actually is control. What did I say? Type. Empty R. And that's what the rest of them is supposed to look like. So it actually doesn't change anything. These things are, this is automatically true because that's just a string. So those weren't asserting anything. I'm going to get rid of this one eventually. So now, since that's true, we know that it's a pointer to this type. P spin, and just a regular cast, just even just a reinterpret cast would work. No, it doesn't even matter. We don't even need to know. Like this H1 is a member of the base class, so we don't even need to do this cast. So I don't even know why I'm doing it, but it helps while debugging. Actually, why am I allowed to do that, I wonder? H1. Now, what is this loop? Where's this H1 coming from? It's coming from a function that gets invoked during the WMInit phase in the global TsDialog WMInit phase. After it figures out what the list pointer is and everything, then it calls this once, which walks through everything that's registered, all of the pointers that were registered, and checks for an ID match. Now, the ID is just that number we set. Okay. Now, where's this ID coming from? This ID is coming from the Windows data structure. In fact, it's where the handle to menu would normally be stored. So some other function is calling this in a loop. In fact, that function is right here, I think. No, that's process. What is that other function? Yeah, you'll recognize it because it does the same thing as walking top level windows. It does an H1 first here. Just like you walk the top level windows, you do. You start with an H-wind. That's the already known handle to window of the dialog. And then you ask for the first child of that H-wind. Okay. And then to get all the siblings, you go to the next sibling by doing get window with the current one with the next parameter. And eventually that returns null and you're done. And so therefore, this thing knows by calling a Windows function called get dialog control ID. And all that does is retrieve the H menu value. So it's saved off, passed in there. So now that part's done. I didn't make a mistake. I did make a mistake. And that is here. Break. Now it shouldn't assert this time. And it didn't. Okay. Now you'll notice that nothing's getting printed out here. Because it turns out that this thing doesn't actually, well, we probably don't have a debug trace on for the finding. return debug trace on. It might be sending some notifiers. I want to center that. Now it does seem to do a lot of this sort of thing, but the truth is it really doesn't matter. Because you wouldn't want to, you're not going to do anything in this case on a notify message. All we want to do is on OK first on init we might want to set a range. Let's say from 75 to 350. Okay, and we might want to set its current position maybe from the registry. Set pause to 120, let's say. We found out it was supposed to be 122. So that initializes it. And then there's an override on the OK button that allows us to know when someone has pressed OK. And in typical MFC fashion, we make a global variable that somebody who's using the dialog can read. Normally I would make a function, but this is the way they like to do it. See, at this point the handle to window is still valid. So we can retrieve the value. If they hit cancel, this value is meaningless. The typical coding, the code will look like now I can't print. Yeah, I can. Print it. The dialog spinner says %d. And if they hit cancel, we won't go in there. Oh, yeah. Oh yes, of course. Now I've overwritten this, and that means that we've lost the default behavior, which we still want. That ends the dialog with the IDOK message. So here it started at 122, as it was supposed to. If I change it to this value, I hit OK. We didn't see it, did we? $155. It said, I don't know if you saw it, it should be in the trace. It wouldn't be in the trace. Find output. Oh wait, would it be the output in this case? No. I have to make another dialog. Trying to go as quick as I can. So when I hit OK, it said 134. That's correct. If I hit cancel, it says nothing. The value can't go below whatever what did I set that at? 75 is the minimum. And there you go. There's a spinner control that works. You can go up to, now see it's not, well, it accelerates. 350 was the maximum. And that's it. So the main thing to remember is you grab the class, take the definition, anything that says C when star becomes H when. Anything you don't understand, you comment away. Just get it compiling. Don't worry about all the details immediately. Then find the code part. Put that in the controls. And it's all just send message, right? It's sometimes returning, and sometimes in this one case, no return. And you know, I'm using these macros. You don't have to. You can just keep exactly what they have and take away that underscore AFX inline blah 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 thing. That's it. That's how you add a control and integrate it with the system. The entire system, the H1 gets set. You can use functions on this thing. If it has a notify message, the notify message will be converted into a call to that special callback. And that's all there is to it. See, maybe it seems complicated when I'm doing it quickly, but you can always watch the video again and then you'll see. Now I must give you something after enduring all that. Something nice to look at. Now you've probably seen them all if you've been following, but maybe you've forgotten some of them. Some of these are new ones of Liz Fair that I made. I like this one actually. I'm very happy with it. No, I don't know. Liz Fair is not exactly a doll or anything, you know, but she's not pretty, but she has sex appeal, I think. No, she has sex appeal. There's no thinking involved in answering that question, which is the reason for this. Her lyrics are often highly sexually charged lyrics. Yeah. And if you look online and look for pictures of Liz Fair, you're going to find a lot of them, a lot of sort of semi-nude pictures of her trying to be hot, but really her sex appeal is not really in her looks, it's in her character or something. Okay, see ya.